live with Miss. Oh no, now we're live. It just went ding with Mr. Eric the Smoke Moran. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat to me tonight.
Thank you for having me, Roland. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to be on here. It's an honor. So thank you so much. I know you and I have been talking back and forth, trying to arrange everything, and also I wanted to make sure my window was open and clear just for you and just for your show.
Well, I appreciate your window being open and clear. So, it sounds so. Yeah, I mean, you're one of these Instagram people who just like stood out to me. I remember I knew of you because David Zaritsky, the Godfather, the Bond Experience, you pinned him against the wall and a thing as Odd Job, and I was like, wow, that guy is cool. And then I got into your cosplay. I'm super into cosplay. I go to New York Comic Con with my best friend every year, and the costumes you do are unbelievable. Like your Hellboy, like your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. You're the legit real deal, except you're more than that. You are 6'3.5" tall, former United States Marine, Semper Fi. You used to have your own TV show on the Sci-Fi Network. Is that right?
Yeah, I was actually host for Heroes of Cosplay on Sci-Fi. Yeah, and I loved every minute of it. When I was offered the job to host the other half of the season, so I was like, heck yeah, oh yeah.
Former professional wrestler.
Yep.
And captain of the Eisenberg.
Yes. And it's funny when you mentioned David. It's funny because the progression thing. It's amazing because I was introduced through another friend from doing another project I did. It was a Star Trek project, and I was a James Bond fan, of course. And my friend John Broughton, who I worked with on his Starship Farragut series and my Trek Isolation series, he introduced me to Dave, and Dave is just a phenomenal, outstanding guy. Bond Experience, I loved when he asked me to do Odd Job. I was like, dude, are you kidding me? Yes, I would love to. And being a part of the Bond Experience and being a part of the events he's done, it has been really a great experience. And so branching off into that, and then doing between all the other crazy things I'm doing this new thing I'm doing with my series, it's one of the original first official fan series from the Orbital. So I'm like, it's just been a blessing. There's been one blessing after the other. So I've just been like, So
there's so much I want to jump into because, like, I know John Broughton. I want to talk to him at some point. I've seen him like twice and be like, I want to chat to you, and then end up chatting to someone else. What he's done with the Farragut is amazing.
Yes, he has. Yes, he's been working his. I know it's well over a decade of episodes he's put out, and he's paid his dues for a long time, and he's doing something new. He's doing Farragut 4 right now, and so to be able to say I worked with him, I was a part of the Farragut family. That was a big honor in itself. So to be able to expand on that and everything, and then when my Trek Isolation series was a spinoff of Starship Farragut, so it's been like one experience after the other, working with a lot of great different people, meeting a lot of great, outstanding people in the field that has the same drive and motivation as I do. It's something that's very refreshing, very refreshing.
And I love the fact that your new show is about the Orville universe, because I love I think like Strange New Worlds just launched, and if it wasn't for things like Farragut Forward and Star Trek fans making so good they should be on TV things, and the Orville just nailed it. Paramount had lost their way with certain shows. They kind of lost the formation of what Star Trek is. Star Trek is so super simple. And then Seth MacFarlane invents his own Star Trek that's as good as The Next Generation.
And believe it or not, Seth did fan films back in the day. He did a Star Trek fan film. He did a couple of them. And a lot of people don't know. If you go on YouTube, you can type it up, Seth MacFarlane Star Trek fan films. You'll see him when he was much, much younger. And also he got a chance to be one of the cast members on Enterprise, one of the supporting cast members on Enterprise. And a lot of people were like, yeah. So there was something that I always loved Seth's work, no matter when he was doing Johnny Bravo, when he was doing stuff at Cartoon Network. And then he knows the pulse of my generation and our generation. Like we were just into everything. So for him to do a series that was heavily influenced by Star Trek, and you could see it. It just had the same vein as Star Trek and all, but his own original concept, which I was just so taken back by it. And you know what's funny about it? When he did the Orville, the season 1 Orville, I remember getting my uniform. I was one of the first people to get my Orville uniform, and I remember sending him a picture on Twitter, and it's a picture of me in my uniform. I'm like, ready to jump on board for season 2 and all. And Seth reposted my picture and said, "Hey, so that was a little bit of when he did that, whether he realizes it or not, that gave me the spark to follow up and do something. And it didn't happen overnight. It was something that I thought about wanting to do. And I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I might do something, how cool it would be. And I think the other reason why it pulled me in even more was because of the fact that people were saying, you need to get this guy on the show. You need to get this guy on the Orville. So that motivated me also. So it was like these couple little factors, and another factor I'll talk about in a few minutes. But yeah, those are some of the factors that motivated me to want to do a planetary step. And what's so funny about it, well, I know we'll get into that in a few, but being able to do this has been a really overwhelmingly, this is an amazing something. It's just been really amazing for me. For me to be able to do this and be able to tell stories, it's something.
I mean, we're birds of a feather because it's all about telling stories. But yeah. I'm so interested. In a second, I'm going to ask you why you picked the Orville verse rather than carry on in the Star Trek isolation verse. But the one thing to me that I think that Seth MacFarlane did so perfectly was he made Star Trek that was satisfied me TNG fans like that, except It was also hilarious. And it's it's laugh out loud funny. And episode 3 of season 1, where they had the one, it was about a girl.
Yes,
that was the best episode of Star Trek ever written in 30 years, and it wasn't even Star Trek. I mean, that was brilliant. That was what Star Trek was supposed to be.
Yes.
And it was hilarious. I was just blown away.
You know what? And what I liked about how Seth went about it, and I've talked about this in prior interviews, I like the fact that he didn't jam it down our throats. It was Gene Roddenberry's style, because you're telling a story without, and you're giving us a lesson without jamming it down our throats, but you're able to tell a story where you had the audience thinking. You had the audience being able to talk about it, and everybody agreeing. For all intents and purposes, the fandoms can be somewhat divided with any kind of genre in pop culture. Sometimes fandoms can get very divided. With the Orville, it just seems like everyone's on the same sheet of music. Everyone's on board. They get it. They understand it. They know this is an original concept that was heavily influenced by the Star Trek and Galaxy Quest. And so for Seth to do that, and then he was hitting the mark every time after that 3rd episode, every episode from that point on, he was hitting the mark. So you didn't know what to expect. One minute you're laughing, the next minute it's like, holy crap, it went in a whole different direction. So that was something that I picked up on right away. Yeah. Identity was another episode that blew my mind. I talked about this too. Identity was that season 2. Identity, the battle for Earth and everything. Identity was the one that really kind of whoa, because you didn't have to wait for a whole another season to find out what was going to happen with Isaac. You knew. You were like, oh, I'm going to wait until next week. Oh my God. So you were just hoping to God that Fox would not cancel this series because you wanted more. You wanted more. So the fact that now it's going to be on Hulu, it's another blessing in disguise.
Yeah. I mean, it's because I was used to Seth MacFarlane from Ted and from A Million Ways to Die in the West. And then I did not expect to get so emotionally invested with these characters.
Yeah, and from talking with producers from the show, because I've talked to a lot of the producers from the show because they like what we've been doing. Basically, every episode that's coming out this season of the Orville is going to be its own movie. So basically, this series, each episode is going to be well over an hour long. It's going to be like you're watching a movie, and I think a lot of people are going to be just blown away. I mean, I listen. I'm so excited about it. Next week, I'm like just getting ready and everything else. But I mean, seriously, they've had 3 years to work on this. I mean, it's unheard of, because of the pandemic and all. They had a lot going against them. And I remember talking with people like Tom Constantino, talking with Brooke Noska, and the thing is, and including Brian Fayette. And the thing is that the way they were explaining it, they had more time to work on stuff, but it was just a labor of love, all the work they put into it. And it's going to show when you see these episodes. So I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised.
So let's go back to you.
Uh-huh.
Like you are somebody who makes things happen. You had like Star Trek Isolation. You've done other fan films. What made you decide to do a fan series set in the Orville verse rather than Star Trek?
Well, okay, so let's go back a little bit. When I did Star Trek, Trek Isolation, it was with the idea of being able to tell my own story in the Trek universe. Myself and Dave Turner, we sat down. We were like, "Hey, why don't we just put our own little Star Trek project together and we'll do a series?" And expanded. We were able to get Stan Lee to appear in our series.
Oh my God! When I saw that,
yeah.
I was like,
"Yeah."
So this isn't just a couple of guys in their basement who've made
no. And I mean, and thanks to John Broughton for connecting us with the studios where they filmed in Kingsland, Georgia, where they filmed a lot of the Starship Farragut episodes. We were able to film portions of that, and then also Dave and his connections over in LA. We were able to film stuff with Stan, because during that time Stan was doing, I believe, Deadpool. He came on set, he did his scenes, then he flew out to go do Deadpool, I believe. So he was doing his scenes in the first Deadpool movie. So to get Stan, and Stan has never done any other Star Trek project. So to be able to get him, it was really the beginning of something unique. We were going to be the ones that put our mark on in the Star Trek community. And then ironically, as things would happen, things sometimes don't always plan out the way you want it to. That's when the restrictions came up. And they put the restrictions on for any Star Trek fan film, fan series, and what have you. So it kind of became like a thing where we were trying to go in a different direction, and it became dead in the water. Like we had the 4 episodes we put out, and then it stopped. And I think that I lost a lot of steam from that, because I've done other productions. I've done other fan films, Doctor Who, Judge Dredd. I've done all these other projects and all. So doing this was like, it took the steam out of me, because I grew up on Star Trek. I grew up in the 70s watching TOS, then, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise. So I was a heavy duty Star Trek fan. I met my wife through Avery Brooks. And again, that's a whole nother story in itself.
I have to hear that story because I love Avery Brooks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so the thing is that Star Trek played a really heavy part in my life. And so not being able to tell my own story or continue telling the story of Captain Jericho, it kind of left me dead in the water. So here comes the Orville. Orville comes out for a season. Every episode I was tuning in. It was like taking me back to the Next Generation days, when I was waiting to see what new episode they were going to put out, what theme they were going to talk about, what was going to be the situation, what crew member was going to be they're going to be focusing on. And I got swept up in it. And by season 2, I came to a decision. I said, you know what? I want to put a pilot together. Well, at that time, it wasn't a pilot. It was just a short. And it was about Captain Jero and him deciding whether or not he wants to get his, become, captain of the USS Eisenberg. The Eisenberg was a concept that I came up with for my friend Aaron Eisenberg, who played as Nog on Deep Space Nine. He was a good friend of mine. And so when he passed away unexpectedly, he and I were supposed to be hanging out and doing some stuff in the future at that time. And so when he passed away, it really took a lot out of me. So I wanted to do something where it was a tribute to him. So I wanted to name my ship after Aaron. And after getting the blessings from his wife, I was like, okay, great, And so we basically started setting this thing in motion. JP from Egotastic Fun Time, I reached out to him because I was a big fan of his podcast show, Talking to Orville. And I said, hey, I would love to get you as a character, one of my lead characters in this episode. So he was like, yeah, I'm all for it and all. And I had Joe Colton. Joe and I have done other projects in cosplay. She's very big in the cosplay community. She does a lot of stuff in Trek. So she was like totally on board. Jason Richardson, who was our first director, J1 Studios, he jumped on board. Jace Griffin from Jace Knockout Studios, he did the visual effects of the ship. So we basically, it came all together in a nice package. Reached out to Adam Mullen. Adam has worked on other projects for Star Trek and everything. So Adam became our music composer. So we put together this story and we put it, out. And it was considered like a movie short. Some people thought it was a movie. Some people wanted it to be a short. The feedback we got was we want more. It was too short. It was so good, but it was too short. It was in the same vein as the Orville. Are you going to be making more episodes, or are you going to be doing more? So I had epiphany, and I said, you know what? I want to do a continuation of this series of this. I call it the pilot episode. My pilot episode, episode 0. And I said, well, with me doing that, it's going to take place at the end of the Battle of Earth on the Orville in season 2. Not at the very end of the season, but in the midst of getting over the events that took place on the Battle for Earth. So that's where the story leads off at. And my character deciding on whether or not he wants to become a captain because of his father and everything else. So with his friend with JP's character and Joe Colton's character, Captain Emmett, talking him into, hey, you need to pursue this. My character ends up pursuing it, and he ends up becoming the captain of the USS Eisenberg. And then moving forward, each episode we try to introduce my main crew members and all. So the first episode we show my character going into the ship. You meet the pilot, you meet the engineer. So basically it started expanding, and we listened to the fans' replies and everything else, and so we expanded on that. Moving forward, by episode 2. I had gotten an official series director, Brian Terranova, who's worked on Doctor Who projects with me. He did a Doctor Who series with me called Legacy that got a lot of acclaim by BBC America, and he's known as one of the official David Tennant lookalikes. So that goes a long way. And but Brian and Brian Terranova and Brian Lessick, who are my series writers, they were also the writers along with myself. But with Brian moving forward, being as my series director, because he knows what I look for and I know what he looks for, he had the right vision of where we want to take this series. And then I started building my cast, and the cast, basically it really expanded. I had my head of security, I had my ship's doctor, I had a ship's doctor, I had a security officer who was on the verge of becoming the next, the protege of and it was just like it was expanding with this crew. And in this new episode, you got the chance to see the simulation of Frankie King, played by Robert Franzese, and he's known as the real life Peter Griffin. So we were trying to show connections with Seth MacFarlane. So we're bringing all these little elements in. Jace Griffin and his visual effects with the ship and the ship design. It just kind of was the perfect marriage of a perfect storm. And as we hit bumps along the road, we're learning as we go. And what's so cool about this series is that the thing that we got the most out of was getting embraced not only by the Orville fan community, but by the producers of the show, who enjoy and they love it, and the cast members, they love what we've been doing. And I was taken back. I was really taken back by that. It was a major honor for me. Not only that, but I decided to expand it even more by having a companion series called A Planetary Diary, where I interview anything and anything about the Orville. So I can interview anybody from the directors of the show to having some of the actors, some of the cast members on my series. And, it will be like a conversation piece, but it would go alongside with anything dealing with the Orville. Whether you are one of my prop makers, whether, you assign music. So basically it expanded. And then I'm like, okay. And then I decided to take it one step further and do a spinoff off of the events that took place in episode 2, which is called Puppeteer Union. So it's all these little elements, and it's just like these ideas are coming into my head all because of this series, the Orville, just making me just come up with all these great concepts. The greatest thing was that we didn't have to worry about getting knocked or getting pinned because of, and Seth and the producers encouraged that. They want to see people appreciate what we're doing. And so what's so amazing about doing this is to be able to create it. Now, mind you, I'm coming out of my own pocket, so I'm not raising money for people to support. I just want people to just come, watch, enjoy, spread the word. So I'm doing it all out of pocket for the most part. And so, and then coming, like a shoestring budget, basically. So imagine if I did have money and I was raising money for the thing. Oh my God, sky's the limit. So we've just been having a lot of fun. It's great people getting together, having a lot of fun, being able to act, being able to be on camera, to be able to be in uniform. Everybody gets to show off their work. It's almost like they're having their own resume, and they can use this for their like jumping point for a resume of, hey, this is what we did off the basis of this great show that's out of science fiction. And we're telling our own science fiction tales in that world. So I know it's a lot to say, but it's just so much, and how much I love this and what we're doing and stuff.
I love it. And one of the things that I think you nail, which the Orville nails, is the style of writing. Because I'm always about like the structure of stories and things. And what the Orville does and what you do, what you just explained, it's like each episode introduces a new crew member and it's about them. It's episodic writing where you can watch an isolated episode and get what's going on and appreciate it. And if you watch the whole series, there are arcs that go across. But each one stands on its own. And that's what the Orville does so well. And Star Trek had kind of lost that plot. It's like Discovery, I like. But if you watched, episode 5 of season 1, you'd be lost. Whereas, what you're doing, you watch an episode, you can appreciate it. And that style, like Strange New Worlds, which they started, they have ripped off the Orville with that episode. Star Trek invented episodic science fiction storytelling. Right. Then they forgot about it, and then the Orville picked it up. People like you picked it up, and now Star Trek's like, oh shit, we should be doing that again.
And they're hearing the fans talking about it and all. And I mean, not knocking Strange New Worlds, they do a great job. I just think that the Orville, Seth unlocked the code. And he unlocked the code. Not only unlocked the code, he broke the code, he threw it out the window, and then said, hey, he's paying homage to Gene Roddenberry's vision, but doing his own thing now. And, I know there was a time I heard that he had the opportunity, he wanted to do Star Trek himself. He wanted to do his own Star Trek series. So I believe that when they said no, or whatever the presentation was, and they said no, Seth decided to say, hey, I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to do. And so that was always inspiring.
Screw you guys, I'll make my own Star Trek with blackjack and hookers.
Exactly. So I thought that was really interesting. And I mean, and again, and then after being on Fox and then taking on a new life and revamping the series, and now you have Orville, New Horizons, it's a whole new way of looking at the series, where it was before and where it's going now. So that's what, for us, we're doing that in our own vein, because people are asking, well, are you guys going to be doing the season 3 uniforms? And I'm like, well, that may come later, but for right now, we're still technically, our crew is based in the world of season 2. So we're basically, our series takes place still in season 2, and season 3, like right now, which you're going to watch on the Orville and all, that's taking place in the future. For right now, our crew, our cast are set right like on the cusp of going into season 3. So God willing, if the costume designers decide to say, hey, we're going to sell cosplay uniforms of season 3 uniforms, guess what? We're definitely doing it. So, but again, we just have a lot of fun. I give it back to my cast right here. Phenomenal group of people that basically taking the time out of their schedules, coming from a distance, just to come here in Philadelphia to film on set. And I mean, I got to give it to my cast and my crew, because without them, we couldn't make this series possible. And so I'm always grateful to, I mean, again, when you can get a group of 8 or 9 people, not including, now you're just talking about the cast, not including production and all that stuff, believing in what you're doing, that speaks in volume. So for me, I feel very, very blessed. I feel very privileged, and they're very much appreciated. So I always, in every interview, I always try to go out of my way to make sure I acknowledge my cast and crew, because I couldn't do this without them.
Oh, well, that's a really lovely thing to say. And it comes across. Now, well, one question I had about that is you have the episodes about each of your crew members. How much of the character that they are comes from them, and how much comes from your writing?
Well, that's a good question. Some of it is a balance of real life and all. What I try to do is give my actors the opportunity to say, well, what do you think about this? And they'll give their input on how they want to be. And I try to encourage them. This is going to be your character. So we want you to bring that character to life. For my character, it's like he's dealing with issues in real life that I've dealt with, especially with episode 3. In dealing with episode 3, for example, without giving anything away, if you watch the episode, it's dealing with a heavy subject, but again, I'm touching on little things that people need to know about. So we try to like bring in certain characters and introducing them. Another character, Kelly Davis, who plays as Valdor, he in real life, he was disabled in one of his legs from a motorcycle accident in real life. So his character is a character that was disabled, but he still wants to serve.
Yeah.
And he's my head of security. So again, that plays life imitating art imitating life. So I try to make sure I incorporate personalities into the characters when we write these characters. So my writers, and then we just expand on it and say, okay, we do a writing session, Zoom writing session. And then I sit down with the cast and we do a read through and see how everyone's feeling. If someone wants to say, well, I wouldn't say this, I would say it like this, because that's how I was. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We're taking notes and we're like incorporating it in the script. So we want to give our cast the freedom of feeling comfortable. So we give the most authentic performance on camera. And that, I think, plays an incredible part when you're watching it and you can relate and you feel something when you're watching those episodes.
Yeah, and you do. I mean, what you managed to nail is kind of like the essence of good science fiction. It's like my dad had all these science fiction paperbacks. I devoured them, and it's basically what you do is you get a really well formulated character, and then you have some weird shit happen to them, and how they react tells the story. And then Star Trek was always like you have two characters from different, with different opinions on things. Some weird shit happens to them, and the conflict comes because they want to deal it in different ways. And that's what you seem to do. You seem to have gone down to that pure distillation of what makes science fiction work.
Yes, you hit it right on the money. You're vibing with me really good. You.
I know. I'm digging this.
Get it.
Okay, what you're doing right now is amazing. Let's go right back to the beginning. You are Eric Moran. How did you get into this stuff? You're Philly born and raised?
Yes, born and raised here in Philadelphia. It's funny. My oldest brothers, I come from a very I came from a family, like a tight family. So growing up in the 70s and all. So for me, I had 2 older brothers, a twin sister, and believe it or not, all 3, myself and my 2 older brothers, all of us were Marines. And so, my mom and dad I always tell people, my mom and dad were my biggest superheroes. Because I grew up on comic books and all. My oldest brother was the one who got me into comic books and everything else, science fiction, Star Trek and everything, Buck Rogers. My brother got me into. So carrying that on throughout the years, and then being in an elementary school, high school, people that know me and they see me now, it's funny because they were like, he was like that back then. And it's funny because they're like, he's still like that now. And so to be able to say, wow, I've been a pro wrestler, I've been a Marine, I'm a comic book character, I'm an official comic book character for DC Comics. I've been all these different things, and it is weird because I'm like, wow, it just feels like everything happened to me yesterday. And so to have all these notches on my belt, everything I've accomplished, and some people sometimes will come up to me and say, well, how's it that you should be doing film and TV and movies and all? Everything comes in its own time. I'm a patient person. I don't feel that I have to rush things. I know eventually I will get there. I've been there, and the one thing is, I tell people, you want to stay consistent. You don't want to be having a thing where you're all the way at the top and you're there and there's nothing else but the bottom to go. I want to stay consistent. I mean, one of my biggest influences watching like Samuel L. Jackson, for example. He's been in the game for a long time, and then he finally, boom, he hit a stride, and now he's just like everywhere. For me, I'm that guy that likes to do background work. If I'm doing a show or TV show or a movie, I want to be that guy in the background that you always see, because I leave a lasting impression when people see me. And
yeah, you can hardly miss you. You're 6'3.5" tall.
Yeah, and so I have a lot of fun. The last thing I did recently, it was 2 years ago before the pandemic. I was in a series on AMC called Dispatches from Elsewhere. I'm on the set. I'm doing scenes with Richard E. Grant, and I remember the producers saw me, and I'm wearing this corporate, I'm in this corporate suit and all. They were like, "We want you here. We're gonna bring you back on a couple more episodes." And I was like, "Great." And that's the thing, again, I just like the idea of just having fun. I don't have to be that guy to have all the lines and all. I want my other cast members to enjoy the spotlight and everything. I'm like, look, it's not just about me. It's about my crew. So that's the thing. I've always believed in that. As a pro wrestler, again, grew up Hulk Hogan and all that, who I never thought in my lifetime I would ever become a pro wrestler. When I did, during that era of almost 10 years of being a pro wrestler, been a world champion, tag team champion, intercontinental champion. I'm like I was the anti-hero, sometimes bad guy, sometimes good guy.
What's it called? A heel.
Fun. Oh yeah. And then I think what really hit my mark was being appearing on the Jenny Jones show back in the 90s. And I was going to say
Jenny Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I've not heard that name in a long, long time.
Yeah, if you look back, there's an episode called Celebrity Lookalikes. They had me on there because of my likeness to The Rock, especially back then.
Do the eyebrow thing. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, and I mean, I did my mannerisms and everything. In fact, there's pictures of me and Dwayne together, The Rock, and like of us back then, and everybody's like, "Holy crap, you all look like you could be related." And so, doing the Jenny Jones show was considered the episode I did was one of the highest rated episodes for that season, and they brought me back again with a real life Ozzy Osbourne lookalike, and we had so much fun. And that kind of opened up doors for me. I ended up doing my first film, Black Ninja, and then I ended up doing all these other little projects, and film and appearances. And then cosplay, that was another thing, that being in the costumes and everything, I always was like that little kid that wanted to wear a superhero costume, wearing a cape and all. So to be able to make appearances at Comic-Cons, like I was doing tons of appearances as The Smoke, my pro wrestling persona, but I wanted to jump in the costume and everything else. And I was doing this way before cosplay became a name. It was called costuming. And I was cosplaying way before. I mean, there's a picture of me back in the 80s, me and my friend. We cosplayed as Tubbs and Crockett from Miami Vice. And we got our bike.
Brilliant.
We got our BM bikes. It's on my Instagram page. We got our BMX bikes, and I'm dressed like Tubbs. He's dressed like Crockett. I'm wearing this. And that was like one of my first cosplays. I tell people all the time, I cosplayed at my high school prom. So again, this is stuff that I was tailor-made for. And my mom and dad always said, especially my mom was like, you're going to be the one that's going to do something big. And so I just was never in a rush. I was never in a rush I just wanted to do things organically. I didn't want to be fake and phony just to have fans. I wanted to have fans that were following the stuff I do because they believe in what I do. And they're like, hey, this guy, he gets it. He's an actual fan. He gets it. He's into horror. He's into sci-fi. He's into comic books. He's into this. He's into collecting and all that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm the guru, of pop culture. So to be able to do all the stuff I've done, it's surreal. And watch all these other people now, and I'm like, oh yeah, you guys are catching up. But so again, loving to see people's fandom and be able to explore their fandom, like David, for example, David Zarinsky with the Bond experience, and him being able to expand on that and be able to really enrich his life. For me, pop culture enriches my life. So anything and everything that I can get my hands on, that I can do or create or bring to life, hey, I'll do it in a heartbeat. So, and it comes back from my mom and dad, because my dad always taught me, work for everything that you want. My mom, her being a creative seamstress and designer, fashion designer.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so that inspired me. My twin sister, I have a twin who worked for Marvel Comics. She was a model. She was an artist. So
is she 6'3.5" tall too?
She's actually 6 even. She's actually 6 even. So yeah. So we tall. Like I think the shortest person in my family, my mom was 5'9". My oldest brother was 6. My other brother, second brother, is 6'5". And I'm 6'3". So 6'3.5". So and then my twin sister is 6 even. So my father, he's the same height as my brother, like 6'5". So the height thing ran in my family. And my daughter, it's funny, when my daughter hangs out with me, people think sometimes she's my sister, and I'm like, no. And my daughter's like in her late 20s and all, but it's funny because you look at that and you're like, okay, but I was heavily inspired by my parents, my siblings, to be able to do what I'm doing today. So, God bless my parents because, they helped me become the person I am today. And I'm always grateful to them, and including my siblings, to help me and steer me in the direction that, hey, do what you love to do, bring, help other people, inspire other people. At the same token, never stop pursuing what you want to do. And so I've been doing just that, and it's been doing good by me.
That it's so interesting because what strikes me about you is like you are a leader, and you've like brought people with you, and that's the thing. David Zaritsky, he's brought so many people together, and he's a leader. John Broughton brings people together to make things happen, and so that leadership. How much of that do you think? Because being a leader means you're serving people, born to serve. I mean, you literally served. You and your brothers were in the Marines. How did you get into the Marines? Tell me about that.
Well, okay, so as a kid growing up, I thought serving my country at the time, it was heroic because I grew up on superheroes. To me, a Marine was like a superhero. It's like heroic. You're doing something. You're helping other people. Then when my oldest brother became a Marine first, and I remember I was like, oh wow. And then my brother Gary, he was tailor made. Like my brother Gary is the embodiment of what a United States Marine is. And so when he ended up joining, and it was funny because growing up, my brother was the one. My brother Gary, he's the middle brother. He was like, yeah, I'm going to be, Heartbreak Ridge came out with Clint Eastwood. And Clint Eastwood, there's a scene where he comes out and he has this rack of ribbons, all this stuff, Gunny Highway. And I remember my brother was like, Gary was like, yeah, that's going to be me, when I joined the Marine Corps. And when he joined, I was like, he was top of his class, everything that he did. And then I joined right afterwards. And my biggest dream was for all three of us to be all together at the same time in our uniforms and all, which we did. And there was a proud moment for my mom. But it was so cool because even after I left and my brother passed on, my brother Gary, who was the one that was like, that's going to be me, he went above and beyond where now he was like the Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps. He left on, he's one of the top honorable Marines, Purple Heart. He's got Bronze Star, Gold Star. He's like done it all. And so, he retired. And so to see my brother carry out his dream, because that was something he wanted, and then be able to say, okay, I was in the Marines, I served my time. Now I'm branched out and doing all these other things. It's something. When my sister was like, hey, you guys got that? I'm going to just pursue my career and everything else and, raise a family and all. So for us to be able to do that, and again, it goes back to my parents. So becoming a Marine, it was something that it was a lifelong dream. You talk about bucket list. That was like one of my top things growing up. Was like, I'm going to become a Marine. I have to make that happen. Do my time, serve my country. And when that happened and when the time went, it was like this. Boot camp, I had my stories. It was crazy. If you saw Full Metal Jacket, for anyone out there who's watching this, you see Full Metal Jacket back in '89, or if you ever saw the movie, what's the other movie I'm thinking about? What is that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal? Full Metal Jacket, and then there was another movie. Oh God,
Jughead or something, or
Jarhead.
Jarhead, yeah.
Well, Jarhead takes place in the same time I was in the Marine Corps in '89. So if you watch Jarhead, that was what I was going through in the Marine Corps, like the experiences and during that era of Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But boot camp was a lot like Full Metal Jacket. If you ever seen Full Metal Jacket, coming up in the 80s, late 80s, going in boot camp. It was exactly like that. So yeah. So again, it was something that I can say I did. You know, I was tested to the ultimate experience, and I became something that bigger than life. At that time, I thought I was bigger than life. I was that ultimate superhero because I became a United States Marine. And it just kind of like it was great for me. It helped me become a better man than what I was when I was going in. They broke me down and built me back up. I just remember appreciating my mom and dad. I was somewhat rebellious growing up in my like later years in high school. But I remember going in boot camp and coming out of boot camp and appreciating my mom and dad even more than what I already did. So I've learned to appreciate a lot of things, and that was an experience in itself. So from there, it carries on with me and how I do things, how I discipline myself as far as structuring and reaching your goals. And so that played a part. That played a really big part as far as moving forward in my life and stuff.
Yeah, because you're an executor. You execute things, you get them done, and you lead, and you have to lead people in doing that.
Exactly.
You're almost like Captain Gerald yourself.
In certain aspects, yeah. And as you'll see, Captain Gerald has a lot of different sides to him, and that was fitting who I was as a person. So, you know, it's great to be a strong leader, but you also now and then need someone to fall back on, your friends, your family, those people to help you stay the course and also have a firm foundation while you're doing it. So that, as you'll learn watching the series, you'll see the degrees of what Captain Gerald is going through. And so it's a great journey that the audience will be seeing and watching as the show progresses.
So you had made it as a Marine, and then were you like, listen, they did not give me metal folding chairs in the services. I need some of that in my life. How did you get into professional wrestling?
Well, believe it or not, when I came out the Corps, I was doing security. I was working in clubs and doing bodyguard work for concerts and working for Philadelphia Eagles. I was doing security for Philadelphia Eagles. And so it so happened that a couple of my coworkers and I, we were heavily wrestling fans, went to a wrestling show in Philadelphia called ECW. And I just remember prior to that, I was doing security work, doing a music video, and I was doing bodyguard work. And I met this pro wrestler by the name of New Jack. And I knew who he was and all, so I come over to him. We had a conversation. He was like, yo, hey, man, make sure you check out the show and everything else. And from that point on, we developed a friendship. And next thing you know, I was getting trained by him. And then I ended up started doing it and branching out and doing my own thing. And because of my resemblance to The Rock, that opened a lot of doors for me because my mannerisms and everything. And I remember one of my wrestling mentors was like, we're going to call you Smokey Maivia, The Rock's, cousin and all. So I was like, okay. And I remember when they first introduced me and they started playing the music, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, and instead it was like, if you smell what the smoke is burning, and I would come out and I had the whole thing with the sunglasses, the eyebrow, the sideburns and everything else, and people lost their minds. And I just remember people were just reacting to me like, no, you're his cousin. You're his cousin. Or, I would go out in public and where some people thought I was The Rock, this girl latched onto my arm and screamed. And I'm looking at her like, she's like, it's you. Oh my God. So I could tell you tons of stories in my wrestling days, but being able to work wrestling and working with some of the greats, Tony Atlas, Nikolai Volkov, who is it? The Iron Sheik. And I remember Iron Sheik when he would always see me, he's like, Rocky, you jabroni, Rocky. And he would and I would be like, oh, Sheik. But Sheik was just so cool. I met so many people in the industry, in the wrestling business, and it was such an honor. And people who I were coming up with, I was wrestling for Dangerous Women of Wrestling, NWA Shockwave, which was like a sister company to TNA. I even got a chance to wrestle in ECW, opening the show with New Jack and everything else, which was a major thing for me. And so I got a chance to wrestle across the board, meeting a lot of great wrestlers, getting learning from them and just hearing the different stories and everything. it's funny. I was like, a friend of mine who's one of the wrestling photographers for the company I worked for at the time, NWA Shockwave. It was like a little photo book and all. And here I'm in the same pages as CM Punk, Billy Gunn, all these other great wrestlers. And I'm like, wow. Oh yeah, I forgot. I worked with CM Punk way back in the day. So to be able to say, yeah, I was a part of that history. And I did my couple of years, like almost 10 years. And then I decided to go in a different direction. I was going Comic-Cons. And that's where the next chapter of my life took a whole new, perspective.
And so tell me about that, because I'm super into the Comic-Con scene. I go every year with my best friend and she dresses up. So I might as well be invisible. It doesn't matter what costume I wear because I'm the hot girl. So. But
you got the look. You could do a lot of different characters, man. I can see you doing a lot of different characters.
My son wants me to do Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I have to
You should. Oh my God, yes. You just say hello there. Well, hello there.
But I mean, the fact is, you are like a physically intimidating guy. You do look like The Rock. You got this huge physique. It's like I always thought Marines were kind of skinny, but it's like no, you're the British house, as they say. Go. I was going to say, so like whatever costume, and then the costumes you come up with are like amazing. Your Hellboy, for example, that was just like legit. It's next level stuff.
Now, Hellboy was. It was one of those cosplays, and a lot of my cosplays, it's funny because some of the cosplays, I might have bought an item here or went to this place here, and it was piecing together. So when I originally did Hellboy, I had it looking like Ron Perlman's Hellboy. And I remember when I first did Hellboy, the very first time I did Hellboy, I was doing the makeup, and I had the, really thin jacket. This is like, mom, like a real thin jacket and all. And I was like, yeah, and I got the glove and all. And then it's funny because years later, I had someone help me design a glove that could move, and I had the fingers moving. Then I had to perfect the shirt, and then I saw David Harbour's version of Hellboy, and I said, okay. I took my silicone mask that was Hellboy. I started putting the hair pieces in to give it more flow, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I bought a weather coat and all, and I'm like, all right, I want him to look different. Pieced all the stuff together. Had my friend help me design a belt for him, and it took on a persona of its own. So a lot of my cosplays that I do is off of things I grew up on, and because I grew up in the 70s and beyond, everything that came on TV, I wanted to do. I wanted to emulate. I mean, whether it was Thundercats, whether it was He-Man, whether it was anything that I grew up on, I try to relive, or something that was retro that a lot of people didn't know. I kind of bought back. Like there was one I did, Gotcha Man, Battle of the Planets. My wife.
Oh God, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and a group of all of us got together, and we did the full team with full costumes, and people were like, "Oh my God, Star Blazers!" I did that like years ago. I recently did Shin Hayata from Ultraman and the Science Patrol uniform and all, and that's hard to. I mean, that uniform, you can't. You would have to have some way of getting that together. So again, I love doing characters that people wouldn't expect me to do, but also doing characters that will have people come over to me and say, hey, like my last Ronin I did last year, and people were like, holy crap. I've done 4 different versions of Optimus Prime. Black Adam was one of my top tier, and Spawn are 2 of my top tier favorite costumes I love doing. Black Adam especially, because I was doing Black Adam way back, and we're talking about before, and yes, Dwayne, I did it way before you were talking about it. I was doing Black Adam way before.
And you're legit. I mean, like your physique with that and everything. Yeah. You personify that character.
I remember when I met Zachary Levi, who plays as Shazam, Captain Marvel. And I remember when he saw me, he was like, holy crap. And I'm totally dressed as Black Adam. I'm like, say my name. And I'm telling him, say my name. And everything. He's like, holy crap. And there's a picture of me and him. And I'm like this. And Zach is like, and all this stuff. And then also, I've done Captain Marvel. I've been Shazam when I had my hair and everything, and I did Shazam. I grew up on Shazam and Captain Marvel. To be able to say that I recently did a movie where the original actor who played as Captain Marvel and Billy Batson. I was in this movie with them. To be able to say, oh my God, I grew up on all these heroes, people that were like my heroes, either working with them, becoming friends with them, or knowing them because through the through Comic Cons and everything else, it's been mind blowing. So to be able to do all these cosplays and have some of the actors that were, that have done these characters and on, they're like, oh, Smoke, that's you. I remember when I did one of the appearances I did, Big Apple Con, I was doing an appearance as a Smoke. And that year I wanted to break out my Rocketeer costume. No one so
you're talking my language.
So I had the helmet, I had the jetpack, the actual jacket, so I remember I was at my table and I took maybe 45-minute, an hour break from my table, put on the helmet and all, and I'm walking around, and I had some of the actors, some of the other people that were making appearances were like, "Is that you, Smoke?" And I'm like, the ones that know me, and I'm doing this to them and all. They're like, "Oh wow!" So I had a lot of fun. My wife, God bless her, she got it. She's into cosplay like I am, so that made it just as easy. And she cosplays along with me. So doing the Comic Cons, a lot of people don't realize is that I was going to Comic Cons as a guest, as a celebrity guest, wrestling guest, but I was going as a celebrity guest that eventually turned over into a cosplay guest. And I ended up being for Wizard World. I was on tour at Wizard World, and I was asked to be their PR spokesperson, when they were doing promos and they were doing stuff for the cosplay contest. I was their MC, hosting panels and everything. At the same time, I was doing my fan films and everything else. So all these things, and I was going in as a fan. But as my reputation built as a cosplayer, there were a lot of people that like, oh, you got the Smoke here. Oh my God, the Smoke. And it's so funny now because everyone is cosplaying now. But there was a time where you didn't have that many cosplayers out there. So, but because I've been doing it so long, and I've done well over like close to 5,000. I'll exaggerate it a little bit, but I've done close to 5,000 cosplays. When I got a closet full of costumes and stuff I'm still working on here. If you saw my real backdrop, you can see all the costumes I have right now that I'm working on, that I'm trying to get ready. Because COVID kind of slowed things down, I have a lot of costumes that are right now on ice that I'm like, last year I did Wrecker from the Bad Batch from Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I saw that. We love that because my 10-year-old, he loves Star Wars. He loves the Bad Batch, and it was just like because you pulled that off. Wrecker's physically intimidating.
Yes.
He's the clone who's like twice as big as all the other clones.
Yeah, and I was and when I say loving doing him, and people were like, "Oh my God, you need to be on the show, live action version." So again, that comes back to loving characters that I love doing, that modify who I am as a person, but that I can fit that character. I love doing characters that people wouldn't expect me to do. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, my catalog of characters I've done, and I've done everything from retro characters that people never knew about or never heard about. Skeletor is one of my more current ones I love doing. But I remember, I was doing Gears of War. I'm doing so many characters. Like if you see my basement, all these different action figures are characters I've cosplayed as. And so right now I'm doing something with the Mandalorian / Book of Boba Fett. I'm doing because I look like one of the clone troopers and everything. So I'm like, I look like a Mandalorian and all. So I just have so much fun. I tell you, man, it's like, it's what keeps me active. It's what keeps me motivated. It keeps me out of a state of depression. So it's just like, you have these things that you love doing, and you're able to just bring it to life, not just talk about it, but actually doing it. So I'm just having the time of my life right now.
Oh, I'm loving that. So we're nearly out of time, but I have to ask you how you got into making films, how you got into that fan film scene, because it's like you've got so many different chapters. You're almost like Arnold Schwarzenegger, how he's like world's greatest bodybuilder, but also world's greatest action film star, also a self-made millionaire. It's like you've got all these different chapters. How did you get into the filmmaking?
So one of the films that got me really my attention was Batman Dead End. Sandy So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. And I remember him doing Batman and Superman, and I'm like, the world's finest. And I'm sitting there and I was following other filmmakers that did these little like fan films. They were fan films that were like superhero films. And I was sitting back and I'm like, I want to do my own fan film. And I remember meeting Brian Gregory, my brother in arms, Brian Gregory, and I sat back and he was like, yeah, I've always wanted to do films and all, fan films. And I looked at him and said, let's do a fan film. And so I said, let's do Black Adam versus Batman. So
what a great idea.
Yeah, and I wrote the script, Clash in the Night. I wrote the script. We, got our costumes together. We shot it. We went to my buddy's mansion. We filmed it. And it was received very well. And being playing as Black Adam, I was just like all over the place with that. And then from there, it kind of took a monster of its own. I did a G.I. Joe fan film where Larry Hama, who was the person who resurrected G.I. Joe, a real American hero, he loved it and all. And I mean, I was doing all this stuff. I think one of the biggest things I did was one of the fan films I did was my Doctor Who Legacy series that, along working with Brian Terranova, who was my series director, we got the attention of BBC America saying, if you want to watch a continuation of Torchwood, this is the place to watch. These are the guys to watch. So I was like, oh my God, that's an honor. For Dread, I did a thing called The Deep End, working with my buddy Oliver Hollandale. He had a series out in the UK called I had The Deep End. He had his Dread series. And so we collaborated together and we got the attention of Carl Urban. And Carl Urban watches our stuff. And he was like, oh man, we got a chance to meet him. My buddy Kurt, who had a connection with the people from the movie, who had the actual costumes, we got the actual costumes made from Dredd. So we did a whole Dredd series.
I grew up reading the Judge Dredd comics. Judge Dredd was huge for me. 2000 AD. It's like classic British comic.
I have those books upstairs. I have the newspaper book. They're still sitting on my mantle. So we did that, and then next thing you know, I was asked to be a part of the 20th anniversary of Spawn for HBO because they were celebrating with Michael Jai White, Todd McFarlane. So I did a film called Choices, a Spawn fan film, and Todd McFarlane gave his blessings, John Leguizamo, Michael Jai White, and we got to show it in New York a couple years back for the 20th anniversary of Spawn. So I got a chance to do that. So off of it, and I'm only just scratching the surface. I did a Predator fan film called The Heist. That when people saw it, they thought it was paying homage to Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. And when people saw it, they thought it was one movie, and it turned out to be something totally different. It was a Predator movie. And so doing these kind of film projects, I got a chance to work with so many great people, talented people that believed in what I was doing. Doing the Trek Isolation series, I mean, that was another major thing. So to be able to do it and doing it on a shoestring budget, I never had to raise money for any of these projects. It was just that I had enough people believing in me to do these things. And with a planetary union, a planetary step, I'm like, oh wow, we're just taking it to the next level. So to be able to do all these fan films and films and shorts and everything, it's a lifelong dream. If I never make it big to the world of films and all, I can at least say I've done these films. Like movies like Ed Wood always inspired me because it was like he followed his dream and he was like, he didn't care what anyone thought. He was like, I'm here to make a movie. Like Ed Wood was like, I'm here to make a movie and everything else. So I believe in that same, same mental aspect of wanting to follow my dreams. I didn't care what anyone said. I just wanted to do something and prove to people that you can do it.
I love that. And that's a brilliant way to wrap it up. That's what I do. I've written 30 books, and whatever happens, when I'm dead, those books are going to be there. My kid, my great grandson might pick up a book and be like, oh my God, these are filthy.
Right. But then you immortalize yourself. That's the thing. What people don't realize, when we do things like what we do, whether in your case writing novels, for me doing films, we immortalize ourselves. For me being a comic book character, we immortalize ourselves. So when people look back and say, hey, I want to do a story about Roland, or I want to do a story about Smoke or Eric, you can, because we left our legacy. You know what I mean? And so it's just one of those things that for us, it's our creativity. It's our dreams. It's our passion. And we're leaving it for the world to see. Because you never know who you or myself might inspire to be the next Van Gogh or the next Langston Hughes or the next Steven Spielberg. You never know, you know?
That is so true. That's so what I mean. That's the thing. It's like part of me believes that when you have this crazy urge to create, it's almost selfish not to, because there is going to be somebody out there for whom it resonates with, even if it's oh. Well, look, it's coming up to the end of the hour. I could speak to you forever. In fact, I want to meet up sometime and see all your costumes in your basement. We'll have to.
Yes. I could. I'll be more than happy to.
I would love that. But I will wrap things up. Thank you so much for chatting to me. Oh my God, what an incredible series of lives you've had.
Yeah, it's an interesting life. If I had left, even though I don't plan on leaving the Earth no time soon, but if I left the planet tomorrow, I can say, hey, I've done all this stuff.
Well, okay, before we go, tell people where they can find your stuff.
Okay, so I'm on Instagram under the Smoke 007. All you got to do is type up the Smoke 007 on Google and all the stuff will come up. But if you really want to find anything and everything I do, just type up Eric the Smoke Moran on Google search. You'll see my Facebook, my Twitter, my oh my God, my TikTok, my Instagram. It'll give you a body of history. Or you can look me up on IMDb as Eric Moran, and you'll see a body of my of work I've done. I tell people that because sometimes people might have a hard time finding me on Facebook or Instagram. So I'm like, hey, the best way to do it, type up Eric the Smoke Moran or Eric the Smoke Moran, and you'll see a slew of stuff come up. Because I've done a Google search on myself, and I'm like, wow.
There was no shortage of stuff about you when I was trying to do some research. I'm sorry, my son's alarm is just going off because his Obi-Wan Kenobi Fortnite skin is now available for sale.
Awesome,
so he wants to go and buy that. He set an alarm for it all day. So I will thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate this. And thank you. If anybody who's watching this hasn't heard of The Smoke, go and check them out on those links.
And most importantly, everyone, please support my YouTube channel, The Smoke 007, A Planetary Step. Please support the Orbital New Horizons on Hulu. Please support that as well. Thank you all out there. And Roland, thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Now I'm going to stop recording.